I like how Mayor Leslie put her role with her name. So I copied that. I'm just inviting others to use that good idea.
I just wanted to make sure everyone knew who I was.
It's very helpful.
Councilor O'Doherty, you're going to have to remind me how to do that.
The 3 dots, if you go to your picture, and then the 3 dots on the upper right, one of them lets you rename.
Thank you.
Smoke.
Hey, Nancy, if Paul's not going to be here today, I would nominate Jane to run the meeting.
That sounds
Can I
good
do
to
that?
me.
Is that something we can do?
I love it.
Vice Mayor, are you, oh, here he is now.
Saved. I've been saved by the bell. Just right off the bat, in case anybody was wondering.
Mayor Weaver, we can start anytime you guys are ready.
Let's start.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we're here to talk about the work session topic for this meeting for May 18th, 2022, and it is options around the fifth penny renewal. And I think that's really all we need to do to get started. So I don't know who's going to lead the rest of the discussion.
Well, I can do some reading here. Jennifer produced a set of options for us, and here they are. There's 3 options available. The fifth penny renewal for 4 years via ballot resolution. This is the resolution will automatically go on the ballot unless one of the other 2 options is met. So the second option would be the fifth penny renewal for 4 years via resolution only. And this requires the town of Rock River, the city of Laramie, and Albany County, both municipalities in the county, to agree to renew the fifth penny tax for 4 years via resolution. If the town of Rock River or the city of Laramie do not agree, this is not an option. And then the third option, the fifth penny being placed on the ballot for the electorate to vote to make the term of the tax permanent. This resolution requires the town of Rock River and or the city of Laramie and Albany County, one municipality and one county, to agree to place the permanent term as a proposition on the ballot. If there are sufficient votes to place the permanent term proposition on the ballot, we also have to place the 4-year term proposition on the ballot.
Okay, thanks. And I think, there it is. There it is. And we had some, we met about this a couple of months ago. And of course, we want to thank everybody for being willing to meet and talk about it again. Mayor Leslie?
Yes, sir.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for being here.
You bet.
We understand, of course, the town of Rock River, you folks met, and you put a resolution to put the fifth penny on the ballot for 4 years. Is that right?
Yes, we did.
And we were wondering, I think, and one of the reasons we wanted to meet again was that I'm not sure if we all really considered the option of putting this out to the voters to be made permanent. And I think we've had some discussion that maybe, given what we all understand about the fifth penny and how important it is, and we talked about that at the last meeting, so I won't get into that too much right now, but we were wondering if it was worth it to get together again to talk about the question of putting it to the voters to make it permanent. And so I think that's the main driver here behind the meeting. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Is that your understanding as well?
Well, and I think what Rock River Council wanted to do is make sure it went to the voters, that they had the right to vote on it. And even now, this is just my opinion, I don't know yet about the other council members, but if you put it on the ballot, that makes it permanent, but the voters get to make that decision. In my personal view, that'd be the way to go.
Thank you, Mayor Leslie. And I think that is a feeling that many of the council people have as well. The Laramie City Council people. I have that feeling, and I agree with what you said and the way you just said it. But I think there was a need for us to get back together to talk about it and make sure that we discussed all the ins and outs. I see Councilmember O'Doherty's got her hand up, so I'm going to call on her.
Oh, what's not clear to me is if it's on the ballot and it fails. So would you have a 4-year and a permanent 2 choices on the ballot, and then how would that work? Because if it fails on the ballot, if we ask to make it permanent and then it fails, then we don't have money for 4 years. What's the option there?
Yeah, Jennifer probably can help with that, Mayor Weaver, if that's all right.
Yes.
So, Chairman Gosar, Mayor Weaver, and City Council and Commissioners, we would have to put both propositions on the ballot individually. So we would have one proposition, and I forwarded it to Bob Souther this afternoon. One proposition would read essentially the same as the language that we have always had for the 5th cent, except we would add language that says for purpose or for the period of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2026. And then the 4 would be for the county sales and use tax for 4 years and against this county sales and use tax for 4 years. And then the second proposition would be generally the same language, but at the end it would say as a permanent tax. And then the 4 is for the county sales and use tax on a permanent basis and against the county sales and use tax on a permanent basis. So it gives the voters the opportunity to vote whether they want it for 4 years and not permanently, or whether they want it for 4 years and permanently, or not for either. And Chairman Gosar asked, I think before we were actually on the call, what would happen if the permanent passed but the 4-year failed. Then because they're individual resolutions, the permanent would be the resolution that carries.
Can I follow up? But if somebody, it's going to be really confusing to understand for voters that, what couldn't it say that you want to renew the sales tax and one of them is for 4 years, the second choice is permanently, and the third choice is don't renew, so that it's really just one question? Because I'm not sure. No, that doesn't work. Okay, never mind. I just think it's confusing. So what if you pass them both? That mean you have 2 taxes?
No, it just means you have the one.
What if both of them
permanently?
Whichever one has more, whichever one of the 2 ballot questions has the higher number of votes is going to be the one that passes. Councilmember O'Doherty is the way I would think that would work. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Oh, you're fine. And I do understand that it's confusing, but unfortunately, in looking at the statute and then talking to the Secretary of State's office today, she did confirm that we had to have them on there separately, and suggested that the education piece would be important from the county, the city, and Rock River to make sure people understood what was being asked of them on the ballot.
Along this line of questioning, and I know there's some hands up, but this is directly related to that last question. So essentially, you cannot go to the voters with this question without posing both renewal questions. In other words, you have to say, are you willing to renew it for 4 years? Oh, and since you're willing to renew it for 4 years, we have an additional question we'd like you to weigh in on, which is, are you willing to renew it permanently? And that's just how it has to be. That is a very, very strange requirement. I'm just going to say that, in my opinion. Next up, I've got Councilmember Schuster, and then I'm going to go to the Rock River Town Council people who've been waiting also. Councilmember Schuster, you're up first.
Thank you very much. It's kind of confusing to me too. I would have really liked the 3 blank one that says permanent 4-year repeal, but I hear we can't have that. So again, everybody's throwing scenarios at it. So let's say people kind of ignore the permanent one, so it has a very, very little voter turnout, but it passes, you know, only 400 people vote for it, but only 250 vote against it, but 10,000 vote on the other one. We're still going to pick the permanent if long as it has a majority, a slight majority, is my question.
My understanding is if the proposition to have it be established as permanent passes, then it would be established on a permanent basis beginning January 1 of 2023.
Thank you.
Rock River Town Council folks, I don't know who's up to speak, and it's all of you on there, so I'm calling on you.
Oh, my 2 council members here just wanted to back the mayor that the key for them is that it goes out to the voters. They just wanted to make sure to reiterate that that's the important piece, right? That the voters are deciding the issue.
Yeah.
Hear, hear. I think a lot of us are very much of that same opinion. I think a lot of us, for a number of reasons, not the least of which being not having to do this every 4 years, and the fact that we don't think that there's ever going to be a time when the 5th penny isn't absolutely required for basic services, would like to see this made permanent. And I'm going to go ahead and express frustration that it feels like, once again, the state, with the tools they've given us, have given them to us in the most difficult possible way to use. Instead of just posing a question to the voters to make the tax permanent, it is a somewhat complicated mess. Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious if this is a plurality of voters or plurality of ballots. Basically, how are the undervotes counted? Are they counted as no votes?
No clue on that, Councilor Schmeckel. We'll do some research. Good question.
If I might be so bold, because I'm a big mouth know-it-all, right? I think that only counts for constitutional amendment ballot measures, Councilmember Schmeckel. Statewide votes on constitutional amendment ballot matters, but Jennifer may know differently, or the city attorney may know differently, but I don't think that's the case for local elections. But it sounds like we need to do some research to find out. Well, I don't know that we really have time. We kind of need to get some of these things figured out, because we want to decide, I think, as a group this evening, what resolutions we're going to put forward to our bodies. So if somebody could figure that out, that would be great. But I'm fairly certain that only counts for constitutional amendments.
Mayor, if I may follow up.
Yes, please.
I do feel that regardless of whether it's a plurality of ballots or a plurality of voters, I think it's worth putting number 3 forward, as in my personal opinion on there. I think that it's just a matter of how much do we have to clarify the language and really make an effort on this, so that if we get people who are confused and they don't vote on either, I don't want those to count as no votes with a missed opportunity.
Appreciate the clarification and you're stating your position on that. I understand. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to add that just for maybe the sake of brevity here, I think we should just put both options on the ballot and let the voters decide, and then we all will just need to engage however is appropriate to make sure the voters are educated and understand what's happening on the ballot. Obviously, 2 questions is harder than 1. But if you support making it permanent, you probably also support making it a 4-year tax. So I think probably that's a pretty logical follow through. And then just going to leave it at that. So I think we go with option 3.
Well, I really like that optimism. Vice Mayor, I'm going to go to the city attorney real quick. Is that okay? Before I just now noticed that he had wanted to talk to us. Go ahead, city attorney.
Thanks, Mayor. And first, I want to thank Jennifer Curran, who's done just fantastic work working with the Secretary of State's office at the state, number one. Number two, she and I together have read a very confusing, incredibly confusing statute together. And I bow to her analysis, but her analysis is the same as mine. And she's been able to confirm that. And so third, I think that is your decision tonight. If you want, and I think you all want, the voters to decide this question. And if you want the possibility of making it, the voters making it permanent, you need to put both those questions on the ballot. If both are defeated, and I believe, Councilor Schmeckel, and I'll talk to Jennifer about this, that no, there's no issue of, undervotes, undermining a vote on a proposition like this. But if there's 2 no votes from the voters, then there is no 5th penny. They could vote yes and no and yes, and then there is a 5th penny, either for 4 years or permanently. The only issue is if they say yes, and that's a nice problem to have. And we'll be able to figure out then at that point whether it becomes permanent or just for 4 years. So that's my analysis, and I again thank Jennifer Curran.
Thank you very much, City Attorney. Yeah, and Deputy County Attorney Jennifer over there, we want to thank you too. I mean, you've certainly done a lot of extra homework on this for us over the last several weeks, and it's such an important question. Of course, we really appreciate it, and it is very confusing, and it's good to be able to rely on some legal opinions. And I think our city attorney likes it when he's not the only one that has to say, "Here's our interpretation." Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't have anything to add. Our city attorney, Bob Southard, with his work with Jennifer over at the county, made it pretty simple to me. Yes on the first part, yes on the second part, the voters get to decide. Simple. We just need to get to work, figure out what we can do, and within the bounds of being an elected official, and get this moving, because we need it, and we need it badly.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I don't sense that there is really any disagreement about putting this question forward. I do think that there might have been some need for some questions around how it works and the what ifs here. And so if we have any more of those, now's the time. And then I think maybe what we'll do is just do a quick check with everybody that we know where we're going. But I'm pretty confident that we do. Anybody else have any lingering questions about kind of the what if scenarios, or not quite sure they understand what that ballot language needs to be? Very strange ballot language. I'm going to say that again. County commissioners.
We're having a fun little conversation over
Right.
Yeah. The ins and outs of what these things mean.
Yeah, of undervoting.
Well, by all means, join in, because I think that's what's kind of ping-ponging around in my mind. I mean, I know everybody's like, all right, let's get it on the ballot and let's ask the voters the question. Well, okay, but I would hate to see that, pass with, what did Councilmember Schuster say? Yeah, 4,000 people voted for it in the general election or something. And then we're going to say, all right, that's a permanent fifth penny tax now.
I think the data, Mayor Weaver, is that even if the undervotes counted in 2018 as no votes, even if, which we don't think they do,
right,
they would still, if they were no voted, the yes votes outweigh the no votes and the undervotes.
Okay.
Easily.
Okay. We don't report it that way.
It's not reported that way, but they did some quick math.
Thank you very much, county folks over there, county clerk. And yeah, that was a very helpful way to put that. Appreciate that information. Councilmember O'Doherty's got her hand up.
I wanted to point out that the lovely people of Albany County mostly fill in those the ballot there. So there were only, I'm sure the county commission just looked at that. There's only about 600 undervotes out of 14,515 votes or ballots. So I think we're in good shape there. The one thing I'm wondering is, can it at least say, would you approve it? I mean, I just think the wording for the second one for the permanent needs to be a lead in. Like if I were looking at this, I would do yes, and then I'd get to the next one. And then I'd say, oops, maybe I was supposed to say no on the first one and yes on the second one. So I just think you have to get really clear with that ballot language. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty, and I agree. And my concern is that we're limited statutorily over how that ballot language can look, right? Just to confirm that again, Jennifer, it pretty much says this is how you have to phrase it, word for word.
It doesn't, it gives us some direction as to phrasing. We're limited in what the prior 4-year voting proposition can look like because it has to be consistent with what has been in front of the voters before. We have some flexibility on the second one, with the exception on both of them being the language in the for or against. That has to stay pretty much the way that it is.
I appreciate that. And just so we're making pretty good use of everybody's time here, I think this is probably an important part of this discussion, because what we want to walk away from here this evening is a very firm idea between the 3 local government groups of what we're going to put forward to the voters. Yeah, I think we've heard that we want to ask the voters. We feel like the permanency question is appropriate. Haven't heard any objection to that. But I would like to make sure that we all 3 together have a really good understanding of what that ballot language is going to look like. So if I heard just now, we're bound pretty much for 2 of those questions, but one of them we have a little bit of flexibility with. And I guess, what are people's feelings about how that needs to read to try to make this as straightforward as possible? I agree with Councilmember O'Doherty that our Albany County voters are pretty good about making sure things are voted on. I'm not sure that we give them enough credit. I don't know that it'll be super overwhelming or confusing. On the other hand, I also want it to be as easy and convenient and clear as possible. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. My only suggestion, Mayor, and to the Rock River folks and our county folks, is that maybe we can delegate this to the appropriate city attorneys and county attorneys to let them work on the language. I don't know that a group this large is going to completely craft language tonight on the call, but I think if the general direction is try to be as clear as possible, if there's flexibility in the phrasing of the second question to try to alleviate those concerns that we can include, great. Otherwise, I think what I've heard is there's some pieces of those that just have to be the way they are. But I'd be comfortable just delegating that to the county attorney, city attorney, and some representation from Rock River to get together and put that together.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. It's certainly not my intention for all of us to write that ballot language together. this evening. On the other hand, I do want to make sure that everybody's real.
No.
I already did.
I do want us to be sure that we're all real clear in as specific a way as possible about how that's going to read out. Two of them, again, it makes sense to me. There's not much we can do about it. The third one, I guess it has a little bit of flexibility, but I don't know how much that really matters. It kind of just means, I see that county commissioners or someone over there has indicated they have something for us.
That would be me, Heber. So I think that we all in this call are wonky enough to understand. So if I put myself in the voter's position, you know, we know that the voters like this tax and understand its benefit and don't mind paying it. But I would be confused, you know, if I didn't know better, I would wonder why I'm being asked to make it go for 4 years and to make it go permanent instead of, or to make it go permanent. Like, a no vote means I don't want the tax for 4 years, or I don't want the tax for, you know, on the second question for forever to make it permanent. Then you could vote yes on one and no on the other, but it challenges me a little bit. I know why it has to be the way it has to be, and I don't disagree. But it seems really like it could be really cool to figure out a way to not frustrate the voters. I mean, like for me, I'll vote yes on 4 years and yes on permanent, because to me it doesn't make any difference. But to the whole voting group, maybe they want it for 4 years but not permanent, right? So, so somebody has to realize they have to vote. Like if they didn't want it, they'd have to vote twice. You know, no twice. If you go yes on either one, likely we're going to get the tax. It's just either going to be for 4 years or permanent. I don't, there'll be a group of voters that actually absolutely know and understand why they're being asked the question twice and what the distinction is. But I'm going to guess it's going to be 40%, somewhere between 40 and 50%, and there are going to be people who say, "What? I thought I just," you know, they'll have to read it to wonder why it got printed on the ballot twice. You know, didn't we just vote on that on the last question? You know what I'm saying? So it's, I don't know. You know, I'm sort of having a stream of consciousness thought, but it's, and maybe it's value for you all, and maybe not. But I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way for us in the language to help the voters understand the best we can. And I don't think it's our responsibility to make everybody understand, but we would want, you know, as many people who cared and could to understand. You know, and they wanted to make the effort.
Happy to work on Ben Jack.
Yes, Commissioner Richardson, I get it. I get it, and I don't mind a little bit of stream of consciousness on this. It's an important question. I mean, I'm kind of hearing from some people, hey, gung ho, we know we got to have this, let's get it out there. But I think we, you know, a little bit of consideration around this, and I don't know. I guess what will happen is, and I see I've got some other hands up, but I want to check with the Rock River folks before I go over there. What we're going to get is some language from the county attorney's office with the ballot questions. I'll say questions, I guess. And we'll put forward a resolution. I hope this is the way this can work. And we'll put forward a resolution from our three agencies saying, yep, let's get this on there and ask the voters. Mayor Leslie, is that your feeling as well? And town council members of Rock River, is that your feeling as well? That's how we'll go with this, and we'll go with that language as presented to us and get that in our resolution so we're all on the same page?
This is Mayor Leslie, and yes, I would agree with that, but I also agree with the commissioner that the language has to be set correctly, because all of us here, we've dealt with resolutions, we've dealt with all this, we've done this. Most voters have no idea about this process, and those questions might confuse them on how they vote. So the language, if we can, on that second question or whichever, I know the state regulates, but it has to be as simple as possible. I'm not saying that the voters are not intelligent. I'm just saying that we have done this before. We know the language. Most voters don't. So I just don't want them to get confused when they go to vote. That's just my thought.
Mayor, I 100% agree. I mean, that's sort of my concern around here as well tonight. And I'm just not that confident saying, okay, well, whatever it says, we're all going to resolve to get it through there. I think we want a little bit more idea about what that question, we do have flexibility in how it's going to read. And I know some people are frustrated and they just want to get the language from our people and say, okay, let's go. But I'm hearing a little bit of the same concern. Councilmember Schmeckel and then Councilmember O'Doherty. Thank you for waiting. I wanted to check with the Rock River.
Thank you, Mayor. I will say that I think that, you know, the wording of the resolution is one thing, but an education effort to make folks aware is something else. My concern would be that people are afraid that we're going to do 2 taxes and they'd be having a 5th and a 6th cent, not knowing that. I'm hoping that we can make it clear that we're asking for a 5th penny with the term of 4 plus more or some other language to kind of make it clear that it's the time, not the extra penny.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just did the math, and with the vote from last time, we could have a 3-way tie. So you could have half of the people in favor of the tax vote for the 4-year and half of them vote for the permanent. And you would have, if the against is similar to before, we would have 4,600 votes in each of those categories. So if we passed it at all, it would be a squeaker having those 2 ballots. So I think we have to do just one or the other, because having 2, it's like, you know, that they're competing against each other, and all the education in the world, it's going to be hard. So, like if people want one or the other, it seems like if it's the other, they're saying, if they want the one, they're saying, I'll do it at least for 4 years. And if they choose the other, you're really saying 4 years. And so, so we could have a 3-way, we could have, yeah, I think that poses a problem now that I've looked at the math.
All right, I'm going to go, Councilmember Schuster, I'm going to check with the city attorney real quick.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Ms. Curran and I have talked about this a little bit, and there's no way we can draft a resolution tonight or ballot language tonight. I think Ms. Curran and I, and she should chime in if she wishes, we hear the preference of Rock River and Laramie and the commissioners very loudly and clearly. And so we'll need to see what we can do with help from the state, if necessary, on the language that we have some leeway on. The language about asking for the part that says, are you in favor of it being permanent? We'll see what we can do. And Councilor O'Doherty, I don't know that there's a way to have a tie. I mean, if it would be like lightning striking, I suppose, but that's I doubt it's ever happened before, and I doubt it can happen here.
If it's the same voters voting for, but they're voting for in one of the two categories, then it's just about the exact same number. What I'm saying is we could lose both of them, only because some people were saying 4 years and some people were saying forever, that it could, if they're mutually exclusive, if you vote no on the first one, yes on the second one, so one or the other, then you could have the same number and have them both be lower than the no's. So I think it's a problem.
Well, I mean, okay. That's what we have to work on the language, but most importantly, I think the political bodies have to work on the education. So in any event, Ms. Curran and I and Jennifer, speak up.
Yeah, let's check over there with the county.
Hear everybody loud and clear, and Mayor Leslie, we will work also with anybody you want us to work with from Rock River.
Well, I appreciate that, and that would be with our town clerk, Andrea Lamb.
Yeah, we want everybody to be on the same page. I see the county officials over there wanted to weigh in on this. And Councilmember Schuster, I know you're waiting, but I'm just going to check to make sure it's not something going along with what the city attorney just told us.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver. This is Jennifer Curran. I was just going to say I'm happy to work with Bob and with Andrea Lamb, as well as Jackie Gonzalez in her office, so that we can work on the language of that permanent tax resolution proposition and hopefully clarify the language within that proposition so it makes more sense when voters have to look at both of them on the ballot.
Thank you. And we know our staff folks and frankly our members of the three groups here, the elected members, we know we'll all work together to try to get this to be as close as we can be to ideal language given our limitations. I think there's just some anxiety around the way we think we have to do this. And to speak to Councilor O'Doherty's point, I don't think what she's talking about is that she's concerned about an exact even three-way tie. I think what she's concerned about is how close it makes all three of the potential propositions. And wouldn't that be wonderful to have it passed by 2 votes? And I guess that's life. I mean, that's how it goes. If something passes or fails by 2 votes, that's the way the system works. But I think her concern, not to put words in your mouth, Councilmember O'Doherty, is just how it creates the scenario. It makes that a much more likely scenario. But I don't think there's any way to avoid that, given frankly, Councilmember O'Doherty, how we're kind of handcuffed to have to put these questions forward. Councilmember Schuster, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. One of the things I think is going to be is education. We need to make sure that people know, no matter what way they vote, we are trying to continue a tax, not raise it. Because that's going to be our biggest thing to get out to the newspaper, the radio stations, anybody that reports the news, Laramie Live on the internet. We need to make sure they know that either way they vote, we are not raising taxes. We're trying to continue with what we have to help run the city. So I think education, just like several of the counselors have said, on commissioners, counselors, and everything, both the city of Laramie and Rock River, is information is going to be huge. We're going to have to really talk about it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Other discussion? Questions? Consideration? I'd like to ask a couple of questions about how far we can go as members of the council and as the commission, city council, and town council in terms of our outreach efforts for this, for education and explanation. because I've heard people bring this up to me a lot, like, well, we can do this and that, but you can't do this. You have to be really careful about how you do this in terms of advocating for this. And it seems like there's an awful lot of that needs to go on to make sure that it's clear. Like Councilmember Schuster says, the education piece of this is huge, but it also seems like you have to be really careful with that. And so I think that just kind of creates opportunities for difficulty. Councilmember Gabriel, I know you've been part of that fifth penny advocacy effort for several years, different times. Can you speak to my question at all a little bit about this? And then, of course, I'm really interested to hear from other people, but I'm going to bring Councilor Gabriel into it simply because he's been active with that exact outreach campaign piece.
Right, we formed a PAC in past years, and that was enabling different organizations to fund the PAC, and then we would go out and distribute information. And the city manager is quite familiar with that as well. We haven't done that recently, but I was on a PAC for about, I think, 3 or 4 different 4-year spans, headed up by CPA, and it worked out fairly well. And it was, after a while, I think the public got familiar with how much the county, Rock River, and the city really needed the fifth penny. And so it kind of died the past couple of 4-year sessions, and we haven't really done anything. But that's a possibility. We could organize some kind of PAC, and then you can get money into that and start your campaign process.
Sure. Thanks, Councilmember Gabriel. And I guess in my mind, it sort of seems like for those non-PAC efforts, if it's put together in a way that says, this is why this is so important, and this is why these funds are incredibly important for our budget, most of that is fine. When you start getting into saying, vote this way, that's when you cross the line. I know that seems a little bit simplistic, but that's essentially it, right? You can go this is why this is important. This is how we use those funds. And that's an incredibly important piece of our local budget. And as long as you steer away from so vote yes for this, you're okay. But I think that starts to get a little bit troublesome with this one, because we're going to say we've got 3 things to vote on, and this is why this tax is important. But you can't, I don't know. Mayor Leslie, thanks for saving me here.
Anything to help. My biggest concern, and as Jackie Gonzalez will know, and my town clerk, over just your recent, the commissioner's polling map, it caused a huge problem out here. People weren't informed and everything, and that's what concerns me. And I'm sure Jackie, and I thank her so much for all the work she did with the precinct maps and stuff. But we had people out here thinking we were going to lose our polling place and all this stuff, because out here we don't get the boomerang. We don't have the same ability as you do in Laramie. So it gets misconstrued out here. So I just want to make sure that when you put it on the ballot, it has to be worded, and we'll do our campaign out here as best as we can, but that it's simplistic, that they understand what they're actually voting for. I guess that's my biggest concern after what I've just, seen in the last couple of weeks out here. That's all I have.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate those comments. Well, I think we know what direction we're going. And I think that there's a lot of concerns and things about this process that really can't be answered or dealt with this evening. Certainly not. But city attorney, county attorney, obviously going to take some time and potentially a little bit more research and seeking some advice from the state about that ballot language. I guess I kind of want to make sure this is clear. I think a lot of this discussion is orbiting around getting this on the general election ballot. Most people working with that in mind as well, not the primary election, but the general election ballot, or the people. That's what I've been thinking. Does anybody have a different take on that? Are we all working off that assumption?
That's correct, Mayor Weaver. It's on the general election ballot.
All right. And that gives us a little bit more time. I'm not going to say a lot more time, frankly, but it gives us a little bit more time to get this together. So we'll see that language, and we'll have plenty of time to consider it before we work it through our process.
Because I'm for it.
Yeah, Mayor Weaver,
yeah.
Do you want us to just sign on? Because the county commission is ready to sign on to option 3. I mean, not as a formal vote, but I mean, yeah, all three of us agree that that's the way to go.
And I think the city council members have expressed that they are in the same position. And I think what we heard from, well, I won't assume to speak for the Rock River folks, but
I believe that's where Rock River wants to be as well.
Town council members over there, you want to weigh in on this? You've heard from a lot of us, but and I've heard you loud and clear. We've heard you loud and clear. The important part is getting the voters to have their say. But what about letting them have the choice there for permanency instead of having to do this every 4 years? Because in my mind, that's what we're doing. Is what we can say, once and for all, or do you want us to ask you every 4 years? Because we're never not going to ask you.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You're unmuted. Hello, Lena Clark here with Town Council. I was watching the wrong little square. Scott and I are in agreement. We're in accord that option 3 is where we see the best path. And we do have some town criers, and we just need to make sure that they have the proper information before they go up and down the street. So if that's an official thing, CJ's done a great job for us. That's what we choose to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for lining it out that way for us. Commissioners, I think the town and city council people are ready to go along with you for option 3. And we're all there. We're all there together. We're all on the bus driving to the same destination. So I don't know what else we need to do tonight.
Yeah. Well, I just look forward to the language. I know it's going to be fun. And so no pressure, Bob or Jennifer.
It's fine.
Yeah, you just have to get us across the line.
We'll get it done.
It's Jennifer, really.
I took the first step. It's your turn.
Oh man, and I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things where we need to pass this message along to the Cheyenne folks and say, boy, there's some improvements that could be made to this process. But that's a discussion for another time, I guess. There's nothing else on our work session agenda, but
No, we don't need to.
I don't want to like rush the end of this here in case anybody else has anything. Yeah.
We're out of bullets over here, Mayor Weaver. So.
All right. Well, unfortunately for all of you, I can always find something to say, but I don't see any other hands popping up over here. So maybe we should go ahead and wrap up our work session, Commissioner I don't think anybody else has anything else. I want to thank the Rock River folks for being here with us again this evening, and I'm glad we were able to get to the same spot.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
All right. Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks.